Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I think it's quite important to properly grasp the situations involving the granddaughter, as it's quite a difficult uh, case to understand fully. So what I'm going to do in this lesson is go through some examples which should fully illustrate the various scenarios, so you have a clear idea of when granddaughter gets and what she would receive in each situation. So the first one, if we look at number one here, is where we have Bintul Ibn, meaning a daughter of the son, in other words, granddaughter, and a bint, a daughter. We know when there is one daughter alone, she receives a half, and we also know that from the granddaughter states that when there is one daughter, this is case number 3 or situation number 3, she will receive a sixth. So the daughter receives a half, and the granddaughter receives a sixth. And we then, if we probably add a uncle onto this, who would receive the asaba or the remainder, and the masala is therefore made from 6 because half and the sixth, 6 is the lowest common denominator, and we then assign the shares. So a sixth of 6 is 1, and a half of 6 is 3, and that leaves a remainder of 2 to go to the granddaughter. So to go to the uncle. Sorry, so the uncle will get 2/6, and the daughter will get 3/6, and the granddaughter would get 1/6. In this situation, if we for a moment were to ignore the uncle, so assume he's not there, and we had two daughters, the two daughters would receive 2/3 of the estate, and the granddaughter would be deprived. So the granddaughter wouldn't get anything, and the 1/3 would go to whoever else is from the asaba. If that was the uncle, then he would get the 1/3. But the important point to note is there are two daughters, then they will get 2/3, and the granddaughter would be deprived. The second example, if we go into the second example, this is where we have a bintul ibn, meaning a daughter of the son, i.e. a granddaughter, and an uncle. And we learnt previously that if there's one granddaughter, then she gets the half, and the uncle will get the remainder. If we instead said that there were two granddaughters, then they would receive 2/3 between them, and the uncle would receive the remainder, which is a third. And similarly, if there were 3 or more, then again they would just share 2/3, and the uncle would get the remainder. So those are fairly straightforward cases. Now we move on to something a bit more involved. Third example is where we have two daughters, and we have a bintul ibn, meaning a daughter of the son, granddaughter, and an ibnul ibn, meaning son of the son, i.e. a grandson. So this here is a grandson, and this here is a granddaughter. So it's a granddaughter and a grandson. So let's consider this. We know that two daughters receive 2/3 of the estate, and we know that usually if we ignore for a moment the grandson, if this was the only situation, i.e. there was two daughters and a granddaughter, we've just learned that the granddaughter would be deprived. However, the presence of the grandson actually means that together the grandson and the granddaughter become asaba, and they receive in a 2-to-1 ratio. So they would get a third between them, and they would share that in 3 parts. Son getting 2 parts, the grandson getting 2 parts, and the granddaughter getting 1. So it's important to remember this situation where you have a grandson along with a granddaughter. um, they receive in a 2-to-1 ratio. The grandson effectively converts the granddaughter into one of the asaba. Okay, this is the fourth situation, the fourth question. And in this situation, we've got a daughter. We have a daughter. We have a bintul ibn, which is a granddaughter. And we have a bintul ibnul ibn, which is a great granddaughter. And we have an ibnul ibn, which is a great grandson. If we go through this question, we can say that the daughter gets a half. We know that the daughter gets a half if she's alone. But what do we do with these three? The rule was that the granddaughter is converted into an asaba when there is a grandson of equivalent nature or lower. But in this situation, we've got a granddaughter and we've got a great granddaughter. So how do we deal with this? Essentially, we group all three of them together. And they receive in that 2-to-1 ratio, such that if there's a total of 4 shares, because there are two granddaughters, they get 1 share each, and the grandson gets 2 shares. So 2 for the grandson and 1 each for the granddaughter. And what you'll notice is that this occurs even though there's 1 granddaughter and there's 1 great granddaughter. They're treated equally, and it doesn't matter that the granddaughter is higher, closer to the deceased than the great granddaughter. They all come together so that they receive the asaba. They receive the other half of the estate after the daughter's received her half. We can also consider a few more situations. What if we were to have a great grandson? So this is, at the moment, that's a grandson. This would be a great grandson, and this would be a great grandson. What happens is that this great grandson is deprived due to the presence of this great grandson. I've mentioned it before, but essentially, if you have X and you have a son and then a grandson, the son's son, if both these people are alive, then essentially the son blocks the inheritance and stops it going any further down. And similarly, if you have son, this one's passed away, this son, the grandson of X, blocks the inheritance from going to the great grandson. So in this situation, the great grandson wouldn't get anything, and the inheritance would stop at the great grandson wouldn't get anything, and the inheritance would stop at the great grandson, and he would share with with the granddaughter and with the daughter. And similarly, if we had a great granddaughter, a great granddaughter, and remember, you essentially read from the bottom up. So this is granddaughter of the daughter of the son of the son of the son of the deceased, which translates as the great granddaughter. And because we said that the grandson has to be parallel or lower than the granddaughter, this granddaughter would not receive anything, because this grandson who she was trying to share with is actually higher than her, and so the inheritance, as with the grandson, great grandson, is it doesn't go any further. It doesn't go any further for these for this granddaughter either. So essentially, if you have these lower levels, they won't inherit because of the presence of this great grandson, who stops the inheritance going further down. He allows the inheritance to be shared with those equivalent to him, such as this granddaughter or great granddaughter, and and those higher than him, such as this granddaughter, but he doesn't allow it to go any further down. So essentially, that's the various situations for the granddaughter. Thing to remember is that the shares, there's a total of 6, and one of the more difficult ones to remember is where there are grandsons, and provided the grandson is equivalent, such as in this case, or lower, such as these two, then the granddaughter will share in a 2-to-1 ratio.